Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this session. Let me introduce myself briefly. So my name is Zakir Kader. I'm one of the CNC person, works for ISP3. So my background is I have JD Edwards experience, 23 plus years of experience, starting from World all the way up to EnterpriseOne in various different releases and, World, One World, and EnterpriseOne. So we are right into cloud now. So today my agenda is going to be so our journey to the cloud and how we progress through getting our instance into the cloud. And also we are going to talk about the experience in the cloud. We have the first generation and the second generation cloud we have implemented. So I can talk about some of the experiences that I have on the OCI side, which is the classic side, and the second generation OCI. And we'll take a look at few implementation models. And I can show you some our current production live environment, how it's been configured, and some of the challenges that we went through while migrating from on-prem to the first generation cloud and from first generation to the second generation cloud, and looking ahead. So if someone goes from on-prem to OCI today, so what are the challenges they have to face? So in order to, before they get to the OCI. So our journey to the cloud. So originally we implemented JD Edwards on-prem the year of 2013. So the intent was to have a demo system. Being a business partners, we are doing demos for various clients and things like that. So the original thought was to have a demo system running on a place. So we chose an on-prem solution for that. So shortly after, so we decided to use JD Edwards for ourselves for time entry and invoicing and things like that. So basically we hosted a demo environment and a production environment on-prem in 2003. So in 2016, so we decided to move into the first generation Oracle Cloud, which is, they call it as the Oracle Infrastructure Classic, so OCIC. So that's the time frame, basically, the Oracle came up with this idea, the Oracle Infrastructure as a Service. So we were one of the early adapters. So we decided to move our on-prem JD Edwards instance to the Oracle Cloud to see how it works. So in 2016, we successfully implemented in the Oracle Cloud. So we were one of the first to implement JD Edwards on the cloud in North America. So something to be proud of. And in 2018, we decided to take our instance from OCIC to move on to the OCI, which is the second generation cloud. So we are live in the OCI, the second generation cloud, for about a month now. So we got successfully moved over everything from OCIC to OCI. So we are live in OCI. So here is some of the experience when we implemented our JD Edwards instance into the cloud, especially the OCIC. So the biggest thing was decreasing the monthly cost. So coming from on-prem to cloud, so it reduced the monthly cost by 50%. Also, it increased the uptime by 99.5%. And then we had a flexible infrastructure. So if you're in an on-prem situation where you need to say, if you need a server, so you'll have to, call the hosting company and say, we need another server. So they will do the provision for us. So in this case, if you are using OCIC or OCI, so you have the flexibility to create your own servers and adjust your infrastructure, the JD Edwards infrastructure, based on your need. And also with OCIC, we had a choice of platform. So on-prem, we were using Windows. Now in OCI or the OCIC, we have the choice. Either you can implement JD Edwards on Windows platform or Linux platforms. Of course, Oracle likes everything on the Linux platform, so but we have a choice there. And the fifth advantage was we have a marketplace so that we can download all the server images. So it's a marketplace. It's like an app store. People who are using smartphones, they are familiar with it. So like the Apple App Store, something similar to that. So the images are there. So simply you just download the image into your instance, then you kind of plug in, fit into your existing infrastructure so that you can make use of it. And some of the issues or some of the challenges that we run into while we are running on the OCIC was did not have all the security features back then. So to be precise, when we started playing with the OCIC didn't even have a Windows server to begin with. So we kind of struggle a little bit, and eventually that the Windows server came into light. Then we were able to do the implementation there. So the other issue was since the security features were not that strong, so we were often hit with malwares, like crypto mining malwares and different types of malwares we were hit with other instance. So sometimes our CNC staff that we kind of troubleshoot, what's going on, and we had to spend time to take that malware out of the servers. And since currently all the features, security features are available in OCIC, definitely we have an option. We can adapt all the new security features in OCIC. However, so we need some time to, migrate all our data and the configurations and the servers and things like into the new security. So it's a fair bit of effort you need to apply there in order to get all the features up and running. Because of that reason and a few other reasons, we decided to move on to take advantage of the second generation cloud, which is the OCI. Those who are interested knowing the difference between the OCI Classic and the OCI, which is the comparison between the first generation cloud versus the second generation cloud. And on the left-hand side, we have the first generation. On the right, we have the second generation. And the first generation, we have a marketplace. It's like the Apple Store. You can go download images, and all the JD Edwards server images are already there, and which is going to be a very quick implementation. So it's like downloading an app from an app, say, if you're an iPhone user, from an app store, then just installing it. Similarly, you can go download the server image from the marketplace and just plug on that to your existing infrastructure or your existing JD Edwards environment, then you are good. On the second generation side, it's still fairly new, and there is no pre-built servers available at the moment. And next thing you need to expect is, because there is no pre-built servers, you need to handcraft all the servers from the scratch. That's one of the effort you need to do in order to implement on the second generation. And the plus sign is they got some faster and better virtual machines, and lot more networking features and the security features available on the second generation. So let's move on to the next slide. So let's take a look at some of the implementation models that JD Edwards provides, and there are some different variations that I decided to choose to implement on our instance. So I'm going to explain those models as well. So here's what you have is the standard implementation. So what it is if you are following a documentation that Oracle provides. So I'm just going into the Oracle documentation. So what Oracle or the JD Edwards provide. So you will end up having a infrastructure, what I have on the screen. So let me explain this little bit about this diagram here. So of course, in JD Edwards, we have to have a database server and different components like the deployment server in the middle, and the server manager and a provisioning server and an enterprise server. On the left-hand side, I have the WebLogic server and a couple of fat clients in here. So one thing you would notice in here, all these servers instances are sitting in a public subnet. So what that means is when you create an instance or a virtual machine on the instance, so by default you will get two IP addresses. One is an internal IP address, so which can be used to talk to each other servers or the resources. The other is a public IP address. So the public IP address means whoever from the outside the cloud, from the public internet, they should be able to talk to that IP address. So by default, you will have both IP addresses attached to every single instance or the virtual machine on the cloud. So coming from OCI and having some experiences with, different malware attacks and things like that. So personally, I did not like that model. In a bit, I will explain it to you some of the advantages that you can take from the second generation cloud, so that you can secure your instances. So in this case, what would happen is all these different ports. So these instances are accessed from different ports. So those ports are controlled from a single point. Say for an example, if someone is accessing a database, so if it is an Oracle, we know it's a 1521. So do we need port 3389 open for the Oracle database? No, we don't. Do we need port 8001 open for the Oracle database? No, we don't want to happen that way. So the reason is so those ports can be sometimes vulnerable on this in some instances. So all the control is happening from one point. So I found this is kind of from the security point of view, a bit weak in here. So therefore, I decided to go in a completely different direction. So I'm going to explain about another scenario that you can use to implement JD Edwards. So this particular scenario is basically does not have this particular scenario you can use for a client that does not have a on-prem or a data center. So it's similar to ISP3. So in our case, all the users are remote users. Either they are accessing this instance from a client side, or it could be, from home, or it could be from a coffee shop, right? So this particular scenario, what we need to do is the way I carved out or the way I configured this infrastructure is, as you can see, all the instances are sitting in a private network. So private, private, private. There are subnets I have designed so that only people who need to access from outside, they will get exposed to that public subnets. For an example, if you take the WebLogic server, so that is one of the servers we need to expose out so that the users would have access to the URL. So definitely that's need to be sit on a public network. Again, the developers, they need to access to their development clients. That sits in a public network. So also I created another network, subnet called Bastion server network. So the idea behind this subnet is since these instances, if you look at the middle column and the right-hand side column, those instances only have a private IP. So those do not have any public IP addresses. So in order to gain access to that server, I have created a separate subnet. It's called Bastion servers subnet. The Bastion server subnet can talk to these private subnets in order to do any maintenance type of a work. Also, you would notice that it all has its own IP range. So the database sits on a separate IP range, and this is kind of a web internal. It's one of the test instance subnet that I have. Again, that sits in a separate subnet range, and all the deployment server, server manager, enterprise server, it sits in its own subnet range, and all the fat clients sits in a separate one, and web and Bastion, they all sit in a separate subnet. As you can see, what are the ports I am opening up? So based on the requirement, those are the only ports available to the outside world. Say for an example, if a JDE admin or an OCI admin need to access, all what they need is port 222 and the 3389, which is a SSH port and the RDP port. Again, only those ports will be open on this Bastion subnet. JD Edwards users, these are the URLs, 8001, 8003. So those are the only ports available on this external web subnet. And the developers, Windows servers, only the RDP ports are available to the outside world. And also, I have security going from communicating from one subnet to another subnet. For an example, if you take the database, so all what I need is the port 1521. So all the other ports, it's not necessary. Of course, if I'm doing any maintenance work, I need somehow I need to get into access to the database. So I have the SSH open in there. So those security rules you can apply at the subnet level. What ports need to be open so that you can make this particular subnet very secure. So those are some of the OCI features that I took in order to implement this model. So all these servers are Linux, of course, other than the deployment server and the fat clients. One of the specialty about this Bastion server is anytime when you want to do a maintenance task, so the first thing I would do as an admin, I would go into sign into either if it is a GUI interface, I would rather go into the Windows server. If it is a direct SSH, if I can do things with the SSH, I will jump into the Linux server. So this is where I go into for the maintenance task first. Once I have full access to all the other servers so that I can do my maintenance work. From the user's point of view, they all only have access to the external web. Again, they are restricted to the ports that is defined inside JD Edwards, or the ports assigned to the environment. Developers, strictly they have access to 3389 so that they can jump into the fat clients, make all the changes. Then being an admin or a CNC person, what he or he would do is they will go into a Windows. From Windows Server, they can jump into the deployment server for doing the package builds and deployments, and that's how it goes in this particular model. However, I am finding this is very secure. So with this model, we are live for about a month now. So moving from OCI, which is the first generation, to the second generation, the securities are very tightened up, and all the ports are tied up, and only the required ports are opened up to the network or the public network. So we kind of finding it is running so far, it's running very smooth. And also, I'm going to explain another security model. So this security model is good for a organization where they have their on-prem, and also maybe they have their own data center. So basically what you are doing is you are extending your on-prem domain to the public cloud. So in this case, as you can see, all the subnets are private. Private, 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 private. The Bastion subnet, you have a choice whether you can keep it as a public subnet or a private subnet. So using as a public network, what it does is, what it enables is anybody, OCI admin or a JD Edwards admin, they can come into the Oracle Cloud as a way of coming into the cloud. So I would say it's kind of a backdoor to the cloud, your own instance. Otherwise, if you do not want to have a backdoor to your cloud, you can define your Bastion server as the private subnet, and you can completely eliminate this whole top section in here. Other than that, what happens is, so on the left-hand side, you have your on-prem or your data center. So you create your own VPN tunnel. It's an IPsec tunnel to the cloud, to your data center. Once you create your tunnel from your data center, you can access the private IP address of all these instances running on the cloud. Still, you can do security based on the subnet. Still, you can tighten up. So that means it is not wide open. So anybody coming from a data center, still it is not wide open. They can access to it, but still you need to, depending on the rule that you have set up on each subnet, that will limit access to each subnet and the areas. So this is a good model for a company that they have their own data center or the on-prem networking device. Okay, so let's quickly go into our own instance. I can show you around a few configurations there, and just going to my instance there. Okay, so here I have two networks. Sorry, I'm going to quickly jump into the slides, and just wanted to explain something to you. So what I'm going to show you here is the scenario A. So as you can see, we have this VCN, which is called Virtual Cloud Networking. So in our instance, I have configured for two of these diagrams, basically, two of these diagrams. So that's what you're going to see. So if I jump into this, so JDE VCN is you can think about if you're comparing with a diagram, that's one, and this is another instance of a similar configuration. So basically, the reason what I have here two different VCNs, one is for the production, and the other one is for demo or development work or testing, or anybody comes to, any consultants, they want to come and, look up for some functionalities and things like that. So they would be coming into this. Anybody doing any time entry and invoicing, those type of functions, real production related stuff, they will be coming into the JDE VCN subnet. So of course, when you look at this, you can see I have kind of separated that out with two different subnets, IP ranges. One is for 26 and the other one is the 36. So let me drill into our production VCN. So once I drill into the production VCN, so in this screen, what you are seeing is all the subnets that I have created inside that VCN. So when you look at this, you would notice my FAT clients are sitting in a public network. My external web sits in a public network. Web, this is one of the testing instances that I have that sits in a private, and applications. So inside the application, I have the server manager, deployment server, enterprise server, all sits in a private subnet, and database, again, it sits in a private network, and the Bastion subnet, again, that's a public subnet. So let me drill into the security rule. Before that, let me get into the Bastion subnet, and I will show you what are the IP address and how this configuration is set up. So once I go into the security list, you would notice anybody from sorry, I went into the wrong security list. So subnets. So Bastion, Bastion. There you go. So what this tells us is anybody from the public internet, they have access to port 22 or port 3389. So that means any server sits under this particular subnet, the Bastion subnet, will have access to only the RDP port or the SSH port. So that's what it tells us. So 000 means it's the public internet. And let's take a look at one of the other subnets. So let's take a look at the database subnet. So if you look at the database subnet, so all what I have is, sorry, again, I jump into the wrong security list. Security list. So DB, there you go. So the ports that are open is 1521. Again, this port is for the server manager, which monitors the database, and 1521. And the port 22 is for the maintenance, which is the SSH port. So again, if you look at the source IP address, it's all internal. There is no public IP addresses listed in here. Again, only these are the subnets can talk to the database subnet. So by doing that, so every time when it's talking to that subnet, only port available is the 1521. Of course, the server manager needs to be communicate to the database server. So that's the reason why this entry is listed in there. So similarly, we have I'll show you the external web subnet. Only port open for external world is the port 8001 and the port 8003, which is the port defined in the EnterpriseOne. So those are the ports published to the outside world. So one of the port is the production port, and the other port is a pre-production port, sorry, pre-prod port. Okay, so once you configure all your subnets, then what you would do is you would go and define your instances. So the way I have defined all the instances, my production instance is running on the availability domain 1. So here you would see all the servers that runs on the production side. For an example, if I go into my production web server, you would notice my subnet is an external subnet, and then I have the public IP address and the private IP address. And if I go to one of the servers hosted on the private IP address, say for an example, the deployment server, you would not see a public IP address. You would have only a private IP address, which can be communicate from our Bastion server for any maintenance task or even to do the RDP into it. Okay, I'm going to pause a little bit here for if you have any questions or any comments or anything like that, so that I can answer.
Hi, Zakir. We did have a question come in. It's referring to the scenarios that you outlined, scenario A versus B. So the question is, would scenario B be a scenario we would use if we were going to set up in the cloud as our disaster recovery instance?
Oh, for the disaster recovery, let me open up that chart. When you have this, so again, the question would be, when you have a disaster recovery, do you want that whole instance exposed to the outside world, or do you have a DR site? You want to expose your cloud to the DR site. So there are a couple of ways you can do it. So there are customers, they have DR sites, they are data centers. So if you have a DR data center, I would not publish anything to the cloud. I would point this to the DR site. And if you do not have a DR site, then what I would do is I would go with the scenario A, so that all the data will be on the DR site, so that people will be accessing JD Edwards as remote users. So the biggest difference between the scenario A and the B, so the scenario A, all the users will be remote, and the scenario B, the users will be all coming from on-prem. If you have a disaster recovery site, if you can set up as coming as on-prem, that's perfect. Otherwise, I would set them up as scenario A. For the replication purposes, of course, you can do the data replication purpose. Of course, you can set up a DRG, the dynamic routing gateway, and the VPN just to push the data from your, on-prem to the cloud. But the real time, the accessing would become a scenario A.
Okay, great. Thanks. That's it for the questions so far, so we should be good to carry on.
Okay. So let's see what are the challenges that we face during these phases from going from on-prem to the first gen, or from the first gen to the second gen. The biggest challenge that I have from coming from on-prem to the first generation, the OCI cloud, of course, at that time it was very new, and Oracle had a marketplace. However, EnterpriseOne images were not on the marketplace, and also didn't have any Windows support back then, and only they supported the Linux server. So we were playing around with the configuration and working closely with Oracle to get the Windows image into the cloud so that we can start using for the deployment server, we can use the Windows. And again, we handcrafted all the servers, and handcrafting servers mean it's not fun. So there are minimum technical requirements, and you need to update patches and packages and WebLogic servers, all kinds of different components we need to get into the servers. So it's not fun handcrafting all the servers, lots of servers. And the other two biggest thing was only network they had was a shared network and public network. So shared network mean it's kind of you are on the cloud, and but you don't know, even though you have a private IP address, whether any other tenants use in the same range. You wouldn't know. And also, they didn't have the flexibility to have your own subnet IP range. So it was provided by part of the install setup, and that you are bound to use those IP addresses. But whereas in in OCI, the second generation, you can come up with your own IP range. In fact, you can match if you are coming from on-prem, if you extend your domain to the cloud, you can set up the same IP range in the cloud, and easily you can extend IP range into the cloud. The other biggest issue that we had was all the servers on the public network. So, for an example, if you are managing your servers through a server manager, the server manager to say an enterprise server, that communication is gone through a public network as opposed to a private network. So, you go out to the world, then you come back in from another channel, then you communicate. So those are the kind of weaknesses that I saw when I did the implementation on the Oracle Cloud Classic. And so this is fairly new. About a month ago, we moved from the Oracle Classic to the OCI, which is a Gen 1 to Gen 2. Here are some of the challenges that we faced. There is no migration tool. Basically, you are on your own. And again, they don't have a marketplace. So no server images. Again, you need to handcraft every single server. And the other biggest challenge was I don't want to deploy JD Edwards in the public subnet. So I'm not sure how many times I went through the documentation, that documentation to see how I can secure my instances. I couldn't find a single spot. There's a mention about using private subnet. So it's kind of a risk that I took, and kind of a research and development type of a task that I took, and I was able to successfully deploy all the major components into a private subnet so that I can secure the instances. And the other one was the setting up the security, the network layer and the security rule. So, obviously there is a learning curve going from generation 1 to a generation 2. So there was a time that I was playing around with the security list and the rules to how can I set it, the best optimized way I can set it up so that, there is no external forces coming into my server resources. And one of the options that I explored during the migration, whether I can use the IPsec VPN, so that when I'm deploying publishing the URL to the remote users, maybe I can introduce an extra layer so that they will have to VPN to the OCI first. Then, as a second step, they can access the URL. However, currently Oracle does not support any user-based authentication. It is a full tunnel. So what is full tunnel mean? It gives you a tunnel between your data center to the cloud. And of course, if you're a remote user, you don't have a static IP address from the remote user, so you wouldn't be able to use it. For IPsec, the requirement is from the outside. It has to be a static IP address. And also, I was thinking maybe I can introduce the load balancer on front of all the URLs, so that they are the people, that is the appliance it's going to phase to the external world first before it hits the JD Edwards URL. Currently, Oracle does not support load balancer for JD Edwards, but I heard rumors that starting January they are going to work on getting some of the features to compliance with the JD Edwards. One other challenge that I ran into was using Windows 2016. Right now, one-click provisioning does not support 2016, even though the matrix says 2016 is supported. But there are some workarounds in order to get all components working as a one piece. So here's some of the tips that I would, bring up. If someone today wants to go from on-prem to cloud, so where would you spend your effort or the time to get things right? So as you can see, the first topic that I have, bullet point I have listed here as planning the network layer and the security OCI. This is one of the major components, I would say, depending on your scenario, whether you wanted to completely expose your instance to the public subnets, or you wanted to put it into the private subnets, and what component goes into the private, what component goes to the public network, what are the security rules. That groundwork needs to be laid out first. So I would spend, before you even getting into implementing it, spinning off the servers, I would spend some time, plan out the network layer and the security layer, how you want to implement the JD Edwards on the cloud. And the second point is preparing and building the JD Edwards servers. So again, as I said, there is no marketplace for OCI. Therefore, every single servers need to be handcrafted. So again, if you are coming from Windows, if you are migrating to Windows, installing Windows servers, patching all the Windows servers, and getting all the necessary components and like WebLogic and database servers, that's going to be a big task. And again, if it is in Linux, install your packages and meet all the minimum technical requirements. That's going to be a good task there. The other thing you need to consider is the data migration. What is the volume of data that you wanted to migrate? So I would think, what's the size of 911? What's the size of the 902 or the inventory? I would consider that time, how much time you need to take to migrate your data from on-prem to the cloud. I would take that question into the equation as well, so that that's not ignored. And it's becoming more challenging if you are doing a platform migration too. So if you are coming from Windows to Linux, or especially if you are coming from an IBM platform like a DB2 400 to going to an Oracle database or a SQL database, think about it. What are the things you need to do? So right now, the OCI supports either SQL Server database or the Oracle database. So what tasks need to happen before we get the data migrated over to the cloud? So you need to think about it. And the other thing is change of tool release and application release. Currently, there is no lift and shift available, especially on the JD Edwards side. So either if you have all the old tool releases, of course you can create the new instances with the old tool releases, and then you can do a one-to-one type of a migration. If not, you will have to take the latest tool release and the latest application release. Then you need to do the migration. That's a bigger task because you are going from an old application release to a new application release. Then you will have to do lots of testing and new functionalities you may have to adapt. So that's going to be a bit of a big task there.
Thanks, Akir, for a great presentation. And thank you all for taking the time to join us today. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to us.